ابتسموا يا اخوان.
طيب اللي تعب ليش ما بينبه؟ وقفتني هاي مش هسه فايت من غاد.
خالد يلا
علم ابو القادر اطلع لقدام خلوا له خليجين في بنايات يا شباب نضرب حشوه وننزل
قوى العشائر السورية تتقدم الآن إلى مدينة السويداء وسط اشتباكات متقطعة.
جاهز 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 يلا.
Il a voulu mettre cette région sous ses ordres. Et nous, on n'a pas l'habitude. On a combattu les Ottomans, on a combattu même l'armée française quand elle est venue, quand elle a dépassé les limites. Et aujourd'hui, on combat la pression aveugle de Jolani parce qu'on ne va pas s'inscrire dans le radicalisme islamique fabriqué par les États-Unis, par la Grande-Bretagne. Il y a eu un accord le 8 décembre 2024 de voler la Syrie, de partager la Syrie entre les États-Unis, la Grande-Bretagne, la Turquie, Israël et les pays de Golfe. Donc ils se sont mis d'accord, ils ont été chercher Golani, qui était absolument pas connu du tout en Syrie, sauf pour son côté terroriste. Il n'a jamais été un homme d'État et on l'a mis au pouvoir. Et dans un temps, ils se bagarrent un petit peu sur des contrats, un contrat de gaz, un contrat de pétrole. Israël avance 2 km plus que la Turquie et donc ils règlent leurs comptes par des frappes. Et Netanyahou, il n'a jamais défendu le Druze, il ne défendra jamais le Druze. Et il a frappé uniquement pour dire à son ami Erdogan, là, tu es dépassé la limite, recule un petit peu.
J'arrive pas à contacter mes soeurs et mes frères. J'arrive pas à partager mon deuil avec eux parce qu'il n'y a pas de communication, il n'y a pas d'électricité, il n'y a pas de rien manger, il n'y a pas de médicaments. C'est une ville siégée jusqu'à aujourd'hui, jusqu'à cette heure-là. C'est mon frère. Ahmed Char, c'est pas un légitime, c'est pas un président légitime. C'est M. Macron, vous avez serré les mains à ce monsieur-là. Non, on ne l'accepte pas parce que c'est pas la même idéologie que nous, c'est pas la même chose que nous. Il est terroriste. Il a fait l'attentat en 2015 ici, il a tué 300 personnes. N'oubliez pas ça, et la France, il ne faut pas oublier ça. Il ne faut pas oublier ça. On vit les mêmes douleurs, on partage les mêmes peines. Réveillez-vous, réveillez-vous.
Quand on n'arrive pas à arracher leurs bijoux, j'insiste sur le fait que le président Macron, que franchement avec un geste minable, il vient d'accueillir El-Joulani ici en tant que président de la République syrienne. C'est pas parce qu'on porte une cravate et un costume qu'on devient un homme d'État. Non.
Ma famille, ils ont quitté le village, ils sont partis à la ville. J'ai un cousin qui retourne au village. Toutes les maisons, elles avaient été défoncées, volées, brûlées. Et ça, c'était commis par qui? Par la soi-disant armée syrienne. Il faut bien comprendre aujourd'hui, c'est qui l'armée syrienne? C'est des anciens de Daesh, de Al-Nusra et compagnie. Ceux-là même, à l'époque, en 2014-2016, Laurent Fabius disait qu'ils font du bon boulot en Syrie, Al-Nusra. Vous vous rappelez? Donc le problème aujourd'hui, c'est que le pays, c'est un terrain de jeu. Et qui jouent les Américains avec leurs pions. On ne va pas s'attarder à parler d'Israël, mais forcément c'est leur intérêt. Ils ont un intérêt, leur carte du Grand Israël, vous en avez entendu parler. Ça passe par la conquête de la Syrie. Comment on fait pour conquérir un pays qui est fort? On coupe sa tête, on divise à l'intérieur, on alimente une division interne. Et qu'est-ce qui en paye le prix? C'est toujours le même, c'est le peuple.
Because our people, friends, relatives, parents, everyone in our province, Sueda, is dying, and they are being killed by the militias of the new government, Al-Shara, Al-Jolani. So they had an agreement today to stop the fire between each other, but unfortunately, Al-Jolani, he has no control of his own militias. So many of them, they stayed in Sueda, they refused his order, and they wanted to keep fighting against our people.
على اساس انه في اليوم وقت اطلاق النار، طبعا على كل حال احنا نعرف الخدعه بالاساس بالحقيقه، يعني هالموضوع مر علينا، بنعرف هالمواضيع هي، انه بالاساس شو اللي صار بالسويدة، هون بالاساس انه عباره عن مقاتلين تبع داعش والقاعده شلحوا اليونيفورم تبعهم ولبسوا اليونيفورم تبع الجيش والشرطه، على اساس انه موظفين بوزاره الداخليه ووزاره الدفاع. لما ازداد الضغط الدولي عليهم بحاولة دخول السويدة عن طريق الخدع بعدين عن طريق القوه، شلحوا الملابس تبع وزاره الدفاع وملابس تبع وزاره الداخليه، لبسوا ملابس القبائل البدويه على اساس انه عشائر.
ندعم اهلنا، لنحاول نوصل صوتنا للعالم كلياته، السويدة ما نكون بيه عم تنذبح والنساء عم تختطف.
عم بيحاولوا يعملوا تصفيه عرقيه، جينوسايد، بياخذوا دروس من ارضهم التاريخيه، بيحاولوا يهجروا دروس من ارضهم التاريخيه، بيحاولوا يمحوا وجودنا التاريخي. ما في وقف اطلاق نار حقيقي، ما في اي شيء، عم يحاولوا نفس الشيء، نفس المحاولة بوزاره الداخليه للدخول على السويداء. نحن ما بدنا شو اسمه هالدخول هذول، احنا بدنا يكون بالسويداء في عندنا عقد اجتماعي جديد، عقد اجتماعي حضاري، ويكون في عندنا دستور حضاري، يكون في عندنا فيدراليه بتعمل سوريا كلها بكافه المحافظات.
شركائنا بالوطن عم يذبحونا باسم الدين.
We need all the worldwide nations, please open the eyes of videos of the Arab countries, which is in Gulf countries. They are driving their... Okay, I want to raise my voice from here. Okay.
ونتمنى باسرع وقت، لانه تعتبر محافظه السويداء اصبحت محافظه منكوبه، نتمنى الإغاثة الإنسانية وبأسرع وقت، اليوم قبل بكرة. راح يكون مأساوي أكثر وأكثر. نتمنى هذا الصوت يوصل للعالم كله. وقفتنا اليوم نتأكد هذا الشيء، ولنأكد نحن ما اعتدينا على أحد، لكن تم الاعتداء علينا وتصفية عرقية منهجية وبكل امتياز، نتيجة عقائد، نتيجة أفكار، نتيجة اختلاف بالثقافات مصرين عليها هون بمنظومة هاي العقيدة. مش بس نحن المقصودين في الساحة السورية، كافة الأقليات بالنسبة لهم هن نفس التصرف رح يتصرفوا معها. بالأمس القريب تصرفوا بالساحل السوري، وبعدها بتفجير الكنائس، واليوم كان دورنا نحن، وبكره ما بعرف الدور لمين.
شبابنا حامين الارض والعرض. نحن فقط ساندناكم بالكلمه.
Mass displacement and widespread destruction continue. Deliberate obstruction of humanitarian aid is a daily occurrence. Civilians are being indiscriminately killed at aid distribution points as they try to access food and water. Starvation is used as a weapon of war. There is no single principle of international humanitarian law that is not violated by Israel. No need to mince our words. Let us face the stark reality as it is. 80 years later, the world has been once again witnessing concentration camps. A campaign of extermination is ongoing against a whole population. It doesn't make any difference whether you are a child trying to fetch water for your family or a mother seeking food for your children. You are the target of the Israeli war machine. Israel is trying to implement a strategy of aggression, not only in Palestine, but also in Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. There is a clear pattern here. If left unchecked, this pattern risks wider destabilization. This is exactly what's going on in Syria. Israeli aggression is threatening the fragile peace that Syrian people paid a high price to reach. These attacks are deepening the ethnic fault lines across the region. It should be clear to all of us by now, Israel doesn't want peace. Israel doesn't want stability. We should collectively make sure that Syria doesn't fall into a spiral of violence. The stakes are very high. The ensuing instability will affect the whole region and beyond. The UN Security Council not only failed the people of Gaza, it failed human dignity. It failed the very values and principles that the United Nations is founded upon. The crisis in Gaza has passed the point of being a humanitarian emergency. This is now a profound test of our collective humanity. We either pass this test together or fail as a whole. What needs to be done is crystal clear. Stop the Israeli war machine, stop impunity, immediate and sustained ceasefire now, unhindered humanitarian aid now, a renewed and urgent commitment to the two-state solution now.
When the president met the interim president of Syria a couple of months ago, he described him as a young, tough, attractive guy. After the latest clashes in Syria over the last few days, does President Trump still support Syria's interim president?
The president still supports Syria's pathway to a peaceful and prosperous country, and you received an update directly from the Secretary of State on the ongoing situation between Syria and Israel. I spoke to him myself this morning to get an update, and as soon as the United States became involved in this conflict, we were able to de-escalate, deconflict. That seems to be continuing. Syria agreed to draw back their troops that were in the area where that clash was ongoing, and we continue to be very actively monitoring the situation. The president wants to see Syria become a prosperous and stable country, and by the lifting of the sanctions on Syria, he's giving them a real chance to do that, and he wants to see that through.
The bottom line is you have a cessation of hostility agreement that's in effect. It didn't work, right? So there's reasons why that cessation of hostilities agreement didn't work, which is part of what we're all trying to solve. Wow. So the Hezbollah disarmament agreement is something that is so internal. Remember, America has Hezbollah as a foreign terrorist organization. So we have no skin in the game in discussing anything with Hezbollah. That's not where we're at. We're discussing with the nation state, your government, how we can help. So when we say what happens to the U.S. if this doesn't happen is disappointment. There's no consequence. It's disappointment. We're here trying to help, trying to influence, trying to usher, trying to bring calm minds together and use our influence on all sides, just influence, to get back to the model that you all want to see, which is a better life for your kids, prosperity, and peace all around us in a very difficult environment. But there's no consequence, there's no threat, there's no whip. We're here on a voluntary basis trying to usher to a solution. That's it. Well, we can't compel Israel to do anything, can we? That's not, America is not here to compel Israel to do anything. We're here to use our influence to bring calm minds together to come to a conclusion. The U.S. has no business in trying to compel Israel to do anything. We're here, as I said 100 times, to help you come to a conclusion with your neighbors, and it's not just Israel. There's other conditions and components, and it's up to you. It's up to the government. It's up to all of you when you're fed up with, tribal rivalries, when everybody is finally come to the conclusion that there has to be a better understanding with your neighbors as to how you live. America can only influence. We're not going to have more boots on the ground in an adversarial nature anywhere. We're just not going to do it. The way the U.S. in general has reacted to all the events in Syria is with unbelievable concern, pain, empathy, aid, and a realization that in these young, nascent governing entities that are trying to be inclusive of minorities, how important the process of that inclusion and communication is, and the coordination of that with its neighbor, which is Israel. So the pushing together of all of these pieces, remembering you've had 15 years of atrocities going on before this government took place. So what happens is people are unsure. It's not the situation in Lebanon. You have an existing government that people may have questions about, but the government has functioned, and it's functioned with its minority elements and with laugh. You have a military that's established and that people understand. You have a new government in Syria that's been in existence for 7 months. You have existing minorities and tribes that have lived most of their children's lives in chaos in another government. So when things happen, they resort to their tribe. It's individual, family, tribe, and then nation last. So what's happened is horrible. It's unthinkable. And the hope is that out of this, a consolidation of these issues occurs quicker. But you have a Syrian government in effect. They need to be held accountable. They also need to be given the responsibility that they're there to do. And part of these problems was a communication amongst all these entities that just did not function. I'm going to have to leave. If you want me to help, I need to leave to go to the next meeting. So thank you so much.
It is July 21st, 2025, and reports say that HTS and al-Qaeda leader Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, that he just misunderstood communications from the U.S. and Israel, that he thought he had the green light to send his death squads into southern Syria to then target the Druze minorities there. Oh, and that's why Israel had to then get involved and start bombing Damascus last week. But before you think that Jawlani and Netanyahu are on opposite ends of the fight here, we have to remember that they are always on the same team. And yes, that's despite these reports claiming that the U.S. is really pushing for some sort of a central government in Syria. So what do we know about these clashes, about how Jawlani came to power in the first place, and about the U.S. and Israel's much bigger plans for the region and the ways in which they want to use Syria to continue to target Iran? Well, we got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Kevork Almassian, a geopolitical analyst and host of Syriana Analysis. Kevork, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a really pleasure to be with you again.
It's always good to talk to you. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here, as I know that reports here in the West are saying that the truce announced by the HTS and al-Qaeda-led government in Damascus on Saturday, that agreement is holding up in Syria's Sueda region after hundreds were killed in recent clashes. Now, I know you've been warning for months about the dangers that Syria's minorities have been facing and still continue to face. So how do you view what's happening with these latest clashes and the fact that you have HTS and Israel kind of conveniently getting involved on each side?
Actually, Jawlani was in Baku and he met with senior Israeli security officials. And the moment he landed in Damascus, this attack was unleashed on the Druze community in Sueda. Now, we have two theories here. One theory says that Jawlani misunderstood the Israelis and he misunderstood the agreement with the Israeli security officials. And they also claim that he misunderstood the American green light, especially when Tom Barak, the special envoy of the US to Syria and the ambassador in Istanbul, talked about that federalism doesn't work in Syria and we need a one centralized government. I don't really believe in this theory, but this is one of the theories that even Reuters has reported about, which they say that there was a misunderstanding. Jawlani didn't know what was the agreement and he came back and he wanted to take Sueda as part of the centralized government, and the Druze fought back, and then the Bedouins intervened and the mass killings started in the city. However, the truth, in my opinion, I might be wrong, but I have been warning against this type of scenarios for quite a long time, because I believe that Jawlani was selected as the president of Syria by the CIA, by the MI6, by the Israelis, by the Turkish intelligence, by different regional secret services because of the character of Jawlani, his past, his ideology, and the nature of the army that he is controlling. For example, what they call now the Syrian army. Falsely, this is not the Syrian army, and also the general security. They know the nature of the fighters among the ranks of this so-called Jawlani army. And once Jawlani talks about a centralized government, he means that he wants to impose the sovereignty of Damascus over all the ethnicities and the sects. Now, this is good in theory, because centralized government which holds power over the authorities, usually it works well in Middle Eastern countries. However, there's a difference between imposing a sovereignty through state institutions and imposing the sovereignty through massacres and ethnic cleansing. And therefore, when I said that the people who are fighting for Jawlani, when they go to Sueda they're motivated by sectarian and ethnic lines, like, which means they're saying that we're going to fight the Druze pigs. This is what they say. And when they went to the Alawite cities, or the cities which are overwhelmingly inhabited by the Alawites in Latakia, Tartus, Banias, or when they ethnically cleansed Homs and Hama from their Alawite community, they said that they're going there to kill the pigs. Therefore, this type of mentality cannot really produce a state. It can destroy a state, which they did already. The hierarchy of the state is completely destroyed and collapsed. Now they are destroying the society, the mosaic of the Syrian society, and the social contract, which there was an undeclared social contract in Syria that each and every community respected each other, coexisted. They each had their own norms and values. They respected each other. They didn't attack each other in an aggressive way to commit genocide or completely eliminate the other side. Now that Jolani is in power, all the sides are talking about elimination. All the sides are talking about that we cannot coexist with this side. The Jolani side says we want to exterminate the minorities. If you read the comments and the reactions in the Arabic language on social media platforms, you understand that the problem doesn't only start with Jolani and end with Jolani. It also starts with the people who support Jolani, because they're urging him to commit more genocides. And that's the exact point when I said they wanted and selected Jolani, because once he is in power, they know his popular base, and his popular base are going to urge him to commit such atrocities. And when he commits such atrocities, it creates vertical lines in the country, and this pushes the country into the Balkanization. Now, the Balkanization of Syria is not a policy which was miscalculated and it is leading into Balkanization. The Balkanization is the end goal. Now, some of the powers in the region, such as Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, they found Jolani in power as an opportunity to impose this centralized sovereignty over the entirety of the Syrian geography, in order to have an upper hand in these regional small calculations on the geopolitical scene. However, the Israelis always had the upper hand in this situation, because they have the Americans on their back, and they're able to persuade the Americans to go along with their strategy. Now, the Americans sometimes disagree with the Israelis, but at the end of the day, when the Israelis intervene in a place and impose a reality, for example, when they intervened and bombed some of the convoys of the Jolani army when they were going to slaughter the Druze, this was a narrow window of opportunity for Israel to present itself as a savior for the Druze. Now, once Israel intervenes, Israel knows that its intervention, it will increase the tensions, and it will increase this rift between the Druze and the Jolani regime. That's why they intervened, because the civil war in Syria is the end goal of Israel. Once the civil war starts, which already started since the December 8, 2024, then Israel can push for the Balkanization and can push for the mini states in Syria. At the time when Israelis come and say, look, the Druze need our protection, Christians need our protection, the Alawites need our protection, the Kurds need our protection. Therefore, they extend their territorial claims inside Syrian territories. And the goal of this is very, very simple. They are talking about it for quite some time. In the Israeli think tanks, they say that Israel has to open a corridor between the Golan Heights to Sueda, and from Sueda to Al-Tanf border crossing, where the American occupation forces are stationed. And from there, they want to go all the way to the eastern shore of the Euphrates, in order to open a corridor then between the Golan Heights and eastern shore of the Euphrates, where the Kurdish forces are located. And this is called the David's corridor. And once they do that, they have a geopolitical presence in the eastern shore of the Euphrates, then they can project their dominance over Iraq in some of the regions which they want to destabilize, especially in Anbar and Najaf and Karbala, where it is called the human fuel of what used to be called the axis of resistance. So this project doesn't only target Syria, it also targets Iraq. And once it targets Iraq, it also targets Iran. And Israel is moving on the chessboard step by step, coming closer and closer to Iran. One of the ways they're doing it is through this David's corridor, and the other way they're doing it in the southern Caucasus, when they are trying to open what is called now the Zangezur corridor, which is between Azerbaijan to Armenia and from Armenia to Nakhichevan. And by doing so, they're strangling Iran from all sides. And Iran is not taking any offensive steps to stop this project, and it will find itself in a very, very dire situation very, very soon, something that some of the people or some of the leaders in Iran think that if they negotiate with the Americans or other powers, this could be avoided. It can't be avoided. And waiting, this strategic patience that Iran has selected, in my opinion, is going to end really, really bad, just like it ended really, really bad for Syria.
Wow, that is, I appreciate you kind of laying out this bigger picture too, because in the media, you get this back and forth and they make it sound like, oh, Israel, they're targeting Giuliani and his HTS government. Look at them. They're bombing Damascus. And it's like, no, I never really bought that idea. They're all working together at the end of the day. But that's really interesting when you start getting into the ways that they are doing this, how they are trying to turn so many of these minorities against each other to get them to fight. And then at the same time, you have the US going, oh, we just want a central government in Syria. It's like, no, you don't. You would have left the central government that was there alone if that's what you actually wanted. So when it comes back to the position that you have Iran in right now, and I know that, we have this current ceasefire. We also have reports saying that, the US and Israel are kind of planning for their next move. Clearly, they did not destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. I don't think that was their overall intention with their attacks. They carried out some big attacks, but it didn't go much further than that. But when it comes to the ways in which, kind of as you were saying, using Syria, using Iraq, using a lot of these smaller militias, or even trying to take out some of the smaller militias that make up the axis of resistance, how do you view that kind of overall goal coming from the US and Israel when it comes to the ways in which they want to target Iran, and knowing that it's not just going to need quote unquote regime change, that this is about, exactly as you were saying, they're targeting Iran from all sides and really this long game that they are trying to play here?
Actually, the Iranians are very good chess players. I mean, it is attributed to them that they started it, right? And they're masters in it. But the Israelis have learned this geopolitical chessboard. Also, they mastered it. And what happened in the past 2 years shows clearly that every step Israel has taken has brought them closer and closer to Iran. For example, they found a very rare opportunity in Syria in October, November 2024 to knock out Assad. And one of the reasons for it is they needed the airspace of Syria to move their fighter jets all the way to northeast Syria, and from Syria to northern Iraq, or what is called now Kurdistan of Iraq. And from there, they bombed inside the Iranian territories. And the first 3 days were, I would use the word, scandalous for Iran, because they truly lost the pace at the first 3 days when the Israelis were bombing the Iranian air defenses and some of the vital infrastructure without serious repelling from the Iranian side, because the Israelis have used different layers of psychological operations, cyber warfare, military warfare, and they had the backing of the United States. In my opinion, in the region, there is something really serious, because I come from this region, I speak Arabic, and I am watching and reading lots of newspapers and media outlets. There is always this I don't know if it is intentional, but they underestimate Israel all the time. Israelis are very smart. And what they're doing with Iran is they are coming in a very slow steps, but sure steps. They're coming after Iran from all sides. They're coming in the Southern Caucasus through Azerbaijan. They're coming now in the Middle East through Syria and through Iraq. And they don't mind, for example, regime change in Syria, even if that would bring someone like Giuliani to power, if that would if they would reach to their goals. And this has happened now in Syria, that they have hit several birds with one stone. Because once the regime change happened, they have completely dismantled the axis of resistance in the region. There is no longer an axis. There are players who are resisting the Israelis, but there is no an axis any longer without Syria. This is number one. Two, After that, they used Syria as a launching pad to attack against Iran. 3, they have established a regime in Damascus that is very anti-Iran, more than the regime in Israel. Now, all these what they call the Bedouins, many of whom were fighting with ISIS and Al-Qaeda in the past years, they just changed their clothes and now they're called Bedouins. This is just, how to say, they're testing how can they manipulate and mobilize these so-called Bedouins in Sueda, and rest assured they will mobilize and use these Bedouins soon against Lebanon. They will use them against Lebanon because they're urging Hezbollah to disarm. And Hezbollah will not disarm, because if they disarm, they will end up like the Druze and they will end up like the Alawites. Therefore, they will unleash these Bedouins against them using the same sectarian script in order to find this Shia-Sunni rift in the region. And let's remember the emails of Hillary Clinton when she clearly said in 2012 that the civil war in Syria helps Israel. This is what she believed back then, and this is still the same policy, that a continuous policy, regardless of the administration, regardless of who is president in the United States. When they see the grand scheme of affairs in the region, there is a strategy which is not set by individuals, but rather the deep state in the United States. And they have been really adamant, and they're coming step by step, achieving their goals. Therefore, Iranians at the current moment need to be very, very worried, at least from what the Israelis are doing in Azerbaijan and Armenia, because they're going to seal the borders with Armenia, and the Americans are coming to lease 30 kilometers deep inside Armenian territories on the borders with Iran. Iran, when Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh, and they ethnically cleansed 120,000 Armenians from there, Iran said, okay, this is Azerbaijanis, so Azerbaijanis have a claim over Nagorno-Karabakh, and supported it. This is like you're shooting your own feet. Now that they have Nagorno-Karabakh in their pocket, the Azeris, they have established 3 air bases there. To who it is directed, these air bases? And we all know that Azerbaijan is an advanced satellite state for Israel. They have, the Mossad operates there like it's their home. They don't have any limits for their operations, and they destabilize Iran. And they launched several drone attacks from Azerbaijani territories against Iran. And Iranians are still talking about negotiations and compromise with the Americans. When I criticize Iran, because I come from a position of someone who loves Iran as a nation. We're not talking about regimes now. Iran is one of the oldest civilizations in the region. They have destroyed our civilization in Syria. 7,000-year-old civilizations passed through Syria. They have completely destroyed it. And if the Iranians do not preserve their nation, I truly believe that the current so-called ruling elite of the empire, they see the world in a post-sovereign lens. They don't believe in sovereign nations, and they don't believe in national identities. They don't believe in these civilizations. They're talking about post-humanism. They're talking about post-sovereignty. They are deliberately destroying these sovereignties, this human history of the region, and they will not hesitate when the opportunity rises to come after Iran and copy the same script that they did in Syria and in Iraq and in Libya, which worked for them. Because people come and say, look, these regime change wars were all failures. Why do we do it again? I totally disagree with these people, because the goal was not some sort of military victory. The goal was to destroy these nations, to destroy these civilizations. How else do you explain one of the first things that the Americans did after the occupation of Iraq is to loot the artifacts and the museums of Iraq? How do you explain that one of the, he was the head of the Iraqi museums, his name was George, I will remember his family name. This person was making a documentary about how the Americans and the Brits looted the Iraqi museums. And once he landed in Canada, he had a heart attack and he died while he was doing the documentary. And that's exactly why we had ISIS, al-Nusra, and all these terrorist groups in the country, which were all secret service constructs. They urged them to destroy our Palmyra, Ma'lula, Aleppo, Damascus, and this will not end well, because Jolani is in power, and Jolani's men who are fighting for him, they see this history as heresy. They see that all these artifacts are idols, like you are praying to not for God, right? That's why they destroy these things. So this ideology is destructive ideology. If we don't stop it in Syria, it will be normalized and it will expand to other regions. And it seems that nobody is interested to stop this type of ideology at the current moment, because it seems it is useful now it will be useful against Hezbollah and against Iran in a later stage.
Yeah, it blows my mind exactly as you were saying there, how I don't know. I don't know if it's because they're naive. I don't know if it's because they genuinely think that, oh, the US won't go that far. They will. They will go that far if they have the opportunity, whether it's Iran, Russia, China, whatever, pillar of the multipolar world the US is able to target and to destroy. It will do that because the US establishment sees that as being best for them in the long run. And yeah, the people who underestimate that, I'm just going, you have to pay attention to what the US has already done in the Middle East. And I'm with you. I think that Syria is the prime example of that, of what the US and Israel are willing to do. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing and continuing to raise awareness about this. And I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Kevork Almassian, a geopolitical analyst and host of Syriana Analysis. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Before I thank you so much, the name of the person is Donny George. And while he was preparing this documentary, he died in 2011 as a result of a heart attack while he was traveling via Toronto Pearson International Airport. So make it make sense.
Wow. I had no idea. I need to look more into him. That is just, unfortunately, not surprising.
And the head of the Palmyra Museum, they have decapitated him and put his body upside down in Palmyra. This was done by ISIS. This is all patterns. If we don't see them, we don't understand what they are aiming for the people of the region.
Yeah, very, very telling what they have been willing to do and what they will keep doing if they had the chance. Kevork Almassian, thank you